Pictures. A way to save a still of life. A way to remember good, bad, happy, and sad moments. Pictures have existed for thousands of years. As a way to tell stories, a way to share memories, and a way to remind ourselves of times when we may have been happier or sadder. Any way you look at it, pictures are a gateway to many different things. A lot of pictures are happy ones. But what about some other pictures? Pictures that were normal in the moment, but were far from it. Pictures that were in fact a lot more disturbing at a second glance. Maybe they aren't even disturbing by themselves. Maybe there's a story behind them that makes them disturbing. In this video, we will be taking a look at these photos and the disturbing backstories behind them. So I thank you for watching, and please enjoy the video. This first picture looks pretty normal at first. Two people shaking hands. The man seems like he's a bit awkward, but other than that, pretty normal. The woman on the left is actually the, at the time, First Lady of the United States, Rosalind Carter, wife of Jimmy Carter. Maybe that's why this man looks a bit awkward. Well, maybe not, as he had plenty more reason to be a bit nervous. Some of you may already know who this man is, and for those who don't, this man is none other than the infamous killer clown himself, John Wayne Gacy. Gacy managed to become a public figurehead in his community for being an active member in groups around his community, even including the fact he was appointed director of Chicago's annual Polish Constitution Day parade in 1975. He was praised very highly in the political community because of this and many other things. Because of his accolades and the prominence of the event, First Lady of the United States was invited to the event, which she met and took a photo with John Wayne Gacy. This photo was taken on May 6, 1978, and this was by the end of his killing spree, as by this point, he had killed 32 of the 33 young boys he would kill in his lifetime, and he would be apprehended just a short time later in December of the same year. Looking at the picture a bit more, we can also see that he has a pin on him that shows the letter S on it. This pin would have been given to him by the Secret Service to give him security clearance, and that he had no problems in his background check. This was despite the fact that just 2 months prior, a teenage boy accused Gacy of asking him to enter his car, smoke marijuana with him, and while this was happening, Gacy would chloroform him and then abuse him. The police didn't convict due to a lack of evidence towards the claims. He would remain a free man for a few more months, and in that time, this picture was taken. To the unaware, this is a pretty normal picture, but this is pretty far from it, and this is far from the only normal picture with the disturbing backstory. Taking a look at this photo, you'd probably think there isn't anything that looks weird, and you'd mostly be right. The photo was taken at about 3:09 p.m. on August 15, 1998 in Omagh, Northern Ireland. On this day is when 4 men, Michael McKevitt, Liam Campbell, Colm Murphy, and Seamus Dolly, created and planted a massive bomb inside of a car and placed it on the main street of Omagh, Ireland. They did this as they disagreed with the practices of the government and what they were doing to Northern Ireland. The car you see in this picture is the car that would later blow up, ending the lives of 29 people and injuring over 200 more. Remember how I said this photo was taken at 3:09 p.m.? Well, the car bomb would go off at 3:10 p.m. This father and daughter were caught in the blast. Surprisingly, these two did thankfully survive. However, many others didn't. And it wasn't until 2009 when the men who committed this crime would be convicted. It's just a very sad picture knowing these two were just having a good day together, and that day would suddenly turn very bad very, very quickly. And the fact this picture was taken almost less than a minute before one of the most well-known attacks in Ireland's history is just very disturbing. In this photo, we see David Johnston. Born in 1949, he grew up loving science, and more specifically, volcanoes. He loved volcanoes and the science of them so much, he became a volcanologist, basically a volcano scientist. He was pretty well known in the community at the time, and he always had contributed to the learning and advancements of helping understand when eruptions would occur, and the precautions necessary to evacuate people if necessary. His research took him across the country to Alaska, Michigan, Colorado, and several other places. This eventually took him to Washington, where in March of 1980, the area around Mount St. Helens began to receive earthquakes. Because he was around, and it was a near once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study it, he placed his trailer with his research equipment near the volcano and ran lots of tests to determine when it was going to erupt. He had estimated that he would have been outside the blast radius and would have been able to view the eruption unimpeded. He, as well as several other scientists, had suggested that the park be closed to prevent casualties. The park complied despite immense pressure to leave it open. David sat near the volcano for a couple months, running tests and just overall being very happy to do what he loved. This picture was taken on May 17th, 1980. As you can see, he is as happy as could be. The next morning, he was manning an observation post 6 miles away from the volcano. This was then on May 18th at 8:32 a.m. A massive explosion erupted from the mountain. Johnston would see this and would radio in, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it," before complete radio silence. His research station was hit directly by the blast, as this wasn't a typical volcanic explosion, but a lateral explosion, which throws ejecta out in many directions for miles rather than straight up in the sky. A massive amount of this ejecta and lava hit the research station, killing him instantly. The explosion killed 57 people, including him, and his body was never found. 13 years later, they discovered debris from his trailer. This picture is just scary, as slight underestimation of the potential of this volcano led to his unfortunate death, and in this picture, there was no thought of the danger, just the happiness of being able to do what he loved. But even Johnston said that there has to be risks taken to protect people. In this photo, we see astronauts David Brown, Richard Husband, Laurel Clark, Kalpana Chawla, Michael Anderson, William McCool, and Ilan Rahman. This picture was taken a few days after these 7 astronauts entered orbit during a mission to test orbital acceleration. The mission had been postponed for a couple of years because of safety requirements that hadn't been met. The space shuttle eventually launched on January 16, 2003, and had launched with success. This photo was taken with them in space a few days after. However, the mission hadn't gone 100% perfectly. It wasn't until the second day of the mission that people had reviewed some footage of the launch. This was when they then noticed something was concerning. Some foam from the left bipod of the shuttle had broken off and struck the reinforced carbon of the left wing of the shuttle. Upon this discovery, NASA had requested a detailed report with photos of the damage. They received information, and with this info, they asked Boeing to create a detailed model of the damage and if it would be detrimental to re-entry. Boeing created a model, and they had determined that the shuttle would have received enough damage to be very bad for the integrity of the aluminum skin, and that the left wing could have potentially been compromised. NASA, however, despite asking for this info, completely dismissed it, as they said they had ran their own tests. They ran 15 simulated programs using the density of ice as debris. They concluded that in only one of the 15 scenarios did it cause any damage, let alone damage strong enough to be concerning. Because this was using the density of ice instead of foam, they said there was almost a 0% chance that the shuttle had received any damage substantial enough to not warrant re-entry. Because of this, they said there was no risk of any failure and re-entry was good to go. On February 1st, the shuttle began its re-entry. It began pretty normally and was going well. The shuttle, however, slowly began to shed debris. Now, this debris was small and at first wasn't cause for too much concern. However, as the shuttle began to speed up to points of reaching Mach 20 and more debris began to fall off, it eventually reached a point of critical failure. Major pieces began to fall off, and the cabin eventually got to a point where it depressurized and killed most of the crew. If anybody by this point was still alive, the shuttle would have been inoperable, and the shuttle began to disintegrate even further, until eventually it almost completely broke up, and all the debris, as well as the bodies of these 7 people, would have fallen to the ground. The mission led to even more safety measures needing to be taken before and during missions. This was a completely terrible event that had occurred, and if there had been more precaution taken, there could have potentially been something that could have been done for the people prior to re-entry. This photo, however, is one of the pieces of footage from this mission, and it's just so unsettling as these people didn't know what would happen to them just a few days later. In this photo, we see a normal, albeit old-looking violin. This violin was owned and used by violinist and band leader Wallace Hartley. Wallace led a pretty successful life with his violining skills, and it even got him to a point where he was going to get to play for a very big and upcoming event that the world would get to see take place. This event was scheduled to begin on April 10th, 1912. He, as well as several other people, were recruited to play music for the passengers of the upcoming maiden voyage of the Titanic. Wallace was very nervous to go, as he didn't want to leave his fiancée, Maria Robinson, who he had just proposed to. However, she wanted him to go, and eventually he went, as he figured he would be able to get some future contacts for furthering his career. So he, as well as 7 other members, went on the maiden voyage. As we all know, they didn't make it to their destination, and many people would unfortunately pass away due to the lack of preparation and lifeboats. However, Hartley had commissioned his 7 other band members to not flee, but instead stay and play their instruments to the other passengers to try to provide some calm to them. They all agreed, and they all stayed behind to play their music. All 8 members, including Hartley, passed away. Before passing away, Hartley had strapped his violin case with his violin inside to him. His body was found 2 weeks later with the violin still intact. Passengers who had survived when the sinking was going on all went on to say that he, as well as the other musicians, were playing their instruments until they couldn't anymore. While it hasn't been 100% confirmed, it's believed his last words said were, "Gentlemen, I bid you farewell," which was still heard amongst the chaos of what was happening. An unbelievably sad story, and this man, despite knowing his fate and what was going to happen to him, remained calm, asked his musicians to play some music, and did all he could to help comfort the passengers. Him, as well as his other 7 band members, were greatly remembered amongst the people who survived the sinking. Alright everybody, I thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I put quite a bit of time into this video, and I really enjoyed making it and doing all the research, and it was just very interesting to go through these pictures and look up the backstories of them. And even if they were disturbing in nature, it was very informative, and I did really enjoy researching these. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as it not only keeps you up to date with all the content that I post, but it also helps me a lot and keeps me going with making these videos. I don't want to keep you too much longer, so I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.